Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast, where we explore natural homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Family Mentor, coming to you from an island in the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my hilarious husband and 3 growing sailors in our fixer-upper on the beach. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. This is episode 79, and today I'm here with Mr. Chazz talking about caring for kids. His mission is to help adults truly see, guide, and trust children. He is pushing the needle a little closer toward world peace with his approach. If you find value in the Sage Family Podcast, then please leave the show a review. I often talk about watering what you want to grow, and a review is a quick, easy, and free way to pour a little love into something you want more of. I have been following Mr. Chazz on Instagram since he first showed up on the scene. I love his work, and the special flavor that he brings to this advocacy is just so valuable. So thank you so much, Mr. Chazz, for being here. Will you introduce yourself a bit and share who you are and what you're passionate about?
Oh, yes. So my name is Mr. Chazz. I got a song to prove it. You can hear that on my podcast. But so I started off as a Montessori teacher. I ended up becoming an educational specialist where my role was to teach teachers to teach and support teachers. Pandemic happened. I started to share kind of all the lessons I had learned on my journey online. Resonated with a lot of people, and I just continued to really, share and turn into other things with podcasts and one-on-one consulting. And now I'm actually found my way back into the classroom because I want to just continue practicing my skills and practice what I preach and just impact people, parents, teachers, and children just like more intimately. And so I can just share more and I can give more to the world. And so that is a little bit of a condensed version of who I am and kind of how I got here. That's probably the most condensed version I've ever given. So
that was so concise. A+.
Yeah.
That was like elevator pitch. Who am I? That was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to expand a little more. Can you walk us through your journey from a shame and control-based model kind of to rewards and punishments, and then into this like conscious discipline space where you are now?
Yeah. So, when I started really working with kids, it was, an early childhood facility. It was a center. There's like somewhat of a large corporation. And like a lot of people in early childhood, you just you don't get a lot of training before you go in the class, and you just kind of get thrown in there.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people who just got thrown in there. I knew that I liked kids, but I didn't really know how to guide them or handle conflict. And I find myself, enjoying the job, but also struggling quite a bit. And also with just this perspective that I had of knowing that I was impacting the next generation of humans, but not knowing if I was helping or harming with my approach and what I was doing. That really was very stressful for me. And also not even really being able to guide them or even meet the little goals of just, getting them from point A to point B. That was tough. So I did what, anyone would do in this situation. I looked around at what other people were doing, and I pretty much kind of mirrored it. And I just kind of learned, okay, you're doing that, I'm going to try that. And so, what people were doing around me was a lot of yelling, a lot of threats, a lot of punishments, a lot of coercion, and it was also the way that I was raised. So I'm like, okay, well, this is what I got to do. And I started to do that. And it did not, the most important thing was that I didn't like the teacher that I was and that I was being and who I was. Because I had plenty of teachers like who I was imitating to be and who I was, pretending to be and what I was trying to do. And I didn't like that person. Two, it wasn't very effective. Maybe in the short term, it might have gotten some behavior change, but long term, it the same problems kind of over and over and over again, and there was never really any progression or moving forward at all. And so I really started off with kind of like the threats and the punishments. And then, you know what? Like, there's actually a really good story that I'm going to tell to kind of that it kind of embodies. I kind of went through the whole journey in working with this one child, but it, you learn the lesson, but there oftentimes you have to keep learning the lesson. It's not like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, I'm never going to make that mistake again. And let me actually kind of tell you in like the story of kind of when that really took me through the whole journey of from starting off with punishments and then kind of moving through. So there was this child who would constantly take his shoes off. He would always take his shoes off inside of the classroom. And it's against our rules, right? We have a policy that says that the children have to keep their shoes on. And it's the reason being that if there's like a fire or something we have to get out, they're not going to have the time to put their shoes on, and it'll be dangerous. We got to, 120 barefoot children outside,
a catastrophe.
Right. So we got rules. And so like, okay, I'm going to follow the rule. I need to make sure these kids follow the rules because that's my job as a teacher. That's what I'm thinking my main role is. Make sure everyone follows the rules. But this one child kept on taking off. So first thing that I did, and not just me, it was also the teachers around me. We kind of started like, you need to put your shoes on or else. Sometimes it's, it was or you're not going to go outside for recess, right? Well, we can't really do that, like, because we got to take everyone outside. There's ratio, so it was kind of an empty threat. Like, okay, wait, what is this kid like? He likes Legos. All right, you're not going to be able to play with Legos if you can't keep your shoes on. And that wasn't effective to even when we, that's something we were able to actually follow through with. But the kid was still taking his shoes off. So I was like, all right, okay, so that didn't work, right? The stick didn't work. So let me try the carrot. Let's dangle some things in front of the kids and then use some positive reinforcement to get this kid to keep his shoes on. And just for context, this was a 3-year-old. And so, all right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, if you keep your shoes on, we'll give you a sticker, or we'll give you a treasure box, or whatever it was that we could dangle in front of him. And we did it. His shoes were still finding a way off his feet, to the point where we're like out here, like doing a scavenger hunt to find his shoes, because the one shoe would be like in the block center and another shoe would be in the bathroom somehow. And it's just like, this is a struggle, and it's not working. And the punishments aren't working, the threats aren't working, the positive reinforcement of kind of the rewards aren't working. And so I was a closer at the time, and I started to talk to his mom about this. And I was trying to I was still pretty inexperienced at this time, but I was trying to be like as like nice about it as possible. We were really pulling our hair out about this. But, I said, like, he's having a hard time keeping his shoes on. If you come and he doesn't have his shoes on, it's because, like, he's leaving them everywhere and we don't like know like what to do. Like, kids are out here trying to find his shoes, and we've tried a lot to try to keep his shoes on. And I'm trying to like explain what's going on in the classroom. And she kind of stops me and she was like, and she's kind of like making a face. And I'm like what? Like, what? You look like you want to say something. And she was like, I just realized that like you guys haven't met my husband. And I'm thinking, like, what does meeting your husband have to do with your kid taking shoes off? Like, all right, here comes an excuse, I'm thinking this way because this is how we were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
And she was like, my husband's Asian, And in his culture, it's really important that, we take shoes off before we go in the house.
Yeah.
And so we've been really working with him to keep his shoes off and to take his shoes off before he comes inside.
Yeah.
And we've been telling him, take your shoes off, take your shoes off. So at home, he's hearing,
Oh my
take your
gosh.
shoes off, take your shoes off, take your shoes off when you come inside. And at school, he's hearing, keep your shoes on, keep your shoes on, keep your shoes on while he's inside. And so it's a lot of mixed messages there. And just that, that was one of my probably first lessons in like just being culturally competent and aware. But it was a lesson in so many other things, because at that point, I was able to actually see and understand where that behavior was coming from. I was able to I know why you're exhibiting this behavior. And once I was able to really see him and see where the behavior was coming from, then my ability and our ability as a team of teachers to guide him, and the parent included in that, to guide him, our capacity to guide him increased. And then the ideas of like what to do came easily.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't punishing, it wasn't rewarding him. It was just understanding, because our other concern was that, if we let him have his shoes off, then all the other kids are going to take their shoes off. And then that's going to be a catastrophe, and we're going to lose control of the classroom. But this is a very common concern for teachers. Very, very, very common concern for teachers. But once we understood, then we were able to come with a solution like, okay, when you come in, you can bring slippers to school.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
You can wear your slippers inside. And just when we go outside, you can put your shoes on. And we were able to kind of have that conversation with the class. And we were able to, not only have that conversation, we were able to, it opened up the conversation about like how different families do different things, and talk a little bit about culture and different cultures with the kids, and also send the message that, we accept the different cultures in this classroom.
That different isn't wrong.
Right. And like, we have this idea of like, the way that we celebrate different cultures is like, we'll just do holidays and like, it's Hanukkah, pull out the dreidel. All right, Hanukkah's over, put that back in the closet until next year. And like, we talk about all the cultures here, and we're very inclusive. And that's not really authentically being like culturally competent and inclusive. Totally. But this was actually being culturally inclusive, acknowledging the different cultures and traditions and incorporating them in our classroom. And not all the kids brought in slippers, and it wasn't really an issue. And there was, for the rest of the year, we never had an issue with him taking his shoes off. And now, did he take his shoes off sometime? Yeah, but then we just told him to like, your slippers are over there. And, over time, he would go and get his slippers. And it wasn't an issue where we were pulling our hair out, trying to threaten this kid out of the behavior or try to reward him out of this behavior. We just had to understand him, really see him, and then our ability to guide increased tenfold. And that's really, that's this one situation, but this happens all the time with humans.
Yeah.
I was going to say just with kids. Yes, with kids all the time. But this also happens in the workplace. This also happens in our interpersonal relationships, in our spousal relationships, in our friendship. Like, this happens all the time. We try to guide people and tell people what to do without really understanding them first, without seeing them first. And it's like trying to guide someone in a dark room and expecting them to just, blindly follow us without us first seeing them. And when we see them, it's illuminating. It's like turning the light on. And I know you're going to ask some more questions about that later.
I love that. I love that. This is great. It's great.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't talk about it that much, but I actually started my career in early childhood education when I was 15. I was an assistant in a preschool classroom and spent many years and through college and stuff working in early childhood education. And I remember having this moment kind of early on where it was the same thing. I was like looking to the models around me and it was just like the more control, like the better, and like punishments and rewards and all that. And at one point I was like the lead teacher in this room and I had these 1-year-olds all like little soldiers, like doing exactly what they were supposed to do. And I had this moment of none of these kids' needs are being met right now. None of them are happy. I am not happy. And yet this is the pinnacle of like, I've done everything right. And this is not creating the environment that I would want to create. I don't feel like I'm helping these kids at all.
So yeah, there's like these different stages of development that like of like parents and of teachers, and like sometimes it takes a long time to work through. Sometimes people never really get through the first 1 or 2 or 3 stages. But like, a lot of times in the beginning, like the goal is because you know nothing, you don't really know how to guide them at all. You don't really know anything other than the way that you were raised. And that's probably more like what traditionally what other people are doing.
That's how I was raised. Yep.
Yeah. The goal, it's a control based, it's a fear and control based model. And so the goal is like the better that you can control them, the better you're seen as a teacher too. And also as a parent, right? There's this thing is like, oh, like if they're completely obedient to you
still.
Yes. If they're completely obedient, then you'll get pats on the back and like, oh, what a good child. But and a lot of times we don't even know what that adult did to get that child to be obedient. Like, because there are a lot of obedient children who are also abused. Right. And so like, while most people aren't physically abusing children in a early childhood setting, there's this also realization that I had too, of just like, yeah, I got there. I was able to get everyone to be compliant and have everything like to really control the children in the way I had aspired to in the beginning. But then it's like there's more to it. There's got to be more to it than this, right? And then for some children, there's some children who are going to be more the like obedience is going to like the fear and control, like they're going to like get in line, they're going to fall in line to that. And there's some children who are just like, my needs are my needs and I'm going to be who I am, and they're a lot more resistant to it. And those kids end up, usually they're the ones who get punished more and like
force us to confront more of these things that the other children would let us just keep skating by and pretending weren't really issues.
Right. And then this is also like, I also relate this back, like, you think about your work, right? And imagine if someone treated you like we treat children in your workplace. Right. Imagine if someone, when you made a mistake, the first thing they thought of is like, how can I punish them out of this mistake? Right. As opposed to, how can I help you? Or like, this isn't normally, what you do. There must be something going on. How can I help you kind of meet these expectations?
What's the need you're having that I can help support you with?
Yeah. And some of us, a lot of us probably had bosses who may have just first thing was punishment. And those are probably bosses that you didn't get along with. And like, think about like the ones, and this exercise, and I'm going to stop talking and let you actually ask a question, because I got so much in my mind right now. I'm just like going.
It's okay. I love it. Questions be damned.
Think about the bosses that you really liked, best bosses you've ever had. What about them made them the best boss you ever had? I would venture to say, I'm going to guess blindly without knowing anyone. I'm the only person I can see is you, not here but I would guess the bosses that you liked the most were the ones that really, they saw you, they were understanding, right? And they didn't just push things down to you and just tell you a bunch of stuff, what you need to be doing and what you're doing wrong. without first understanding and hearing your side and getting your perspective and making you feel seen,
Yes.
right? That happens all the time in leadership and management. Stuff gets pushed down, and the people at the top don't listen to the people at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
boots on the ground. And people, and what happens, I see this, this happens in education all the time too, but in almost probably every other profession, is that the people at the bottom, when that stuff gets pushed down and you're trying to be guided before they're seen first,
Mm-hmm.
they may get the thing, but then they're like, does this person, like, does this person know, like, what we have to go through? Does this person know how this is going to affect the client? Does this person know how it's going to impact me? This isn't realistic. This is crazy. Why would do they even understand? No, they just sit up there in their ivory tower and they make up a bunch of rules. Why don't they come down here and try some of this stuff? Right? Like,
Yeah.
these conversations happen
Yeah.
in almost every profession. And it's because leadership often doesn't take the time to really understand what's going down, what's happening, kind of like boots on the ground at the bottom, the
Mm-hmm.
people who are doing the kind of like interpersonal work that are really kind of really making the company run and doing those tasks that are essential for the company
Yeah.
to run. But it's the best when leadership can include people, at least representatives, so that they can at least hear the perspective, so they can take that into account when they try to guide and not just blindly push things down. And that doesn't just impact, like that doesn't, it's not a thing that just impacts people not liking you. It also impacts the money, the bottom
Mm-hmm.
line. It impacts turnover, like
The whole
these,
system functions better when we are actually seeing people and understanding the work that's in their hands in that moment and being supportive. So funny that question when you said like your best boss you've ever had. Immediately it was my supervisor in my MFT, my marital and family therapy practicum. And they were mentors. So I trusted that they would provide the boundaries I needed to not hurt my own career and not hurt my clients. Because we were like fresh in grad school. It's like a vulnerable, scary thing to go into your practicum where these people are before you, like, pouring their hearts out and you're expected to be able to help them. And yet, like that supervisor said I could bring my 1-year-old to all of our supervision meetings
mm,
because he knew that like that was something that would help me to be able to show up and do my job better. Like just all of those little things, like you said, taking the time to get to like see each of these individual people before them. And as parents, like, or people who are taking care of children, like that's so applicable. And it's something that so many of us can have personal experience to draw upon. And it allows us to draw upon the personal experience without getting so tangled up in issues. Like, whereas we think like, look, reflect on how your parents did things. And that's sort of like tsunami sized wave of stuff to unpack. But
yeah.
thinking about like, who is your favorite like supervisor or boss you ever had? That kind of allows us to access a little bit of that without so much overwhelm, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Can I share my kind of my
Yes.
general approach? And I've
Yes.
kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I want to be explicit about talking about this. 3 words: see, guide, trust. Right? The idea is you have to be able to see someone before you're able to effectively guide someone, right? Most of the times what we do is and we think, as parents, as teachers, even as leaders, as managers, we think that we have all of the best information, and if these subordinates, if these kids, if these could just listen to us, then everything will be rainbows and butterflies and sunshine, right? But the problem is we're not really listening to them. And what happens when we listen to them and we see them, it's like it's illuminating, right? Two big things happen when we see someone. First, one, when we see someone and they feel seen, they are more willing to go on the journey, to take our guidance and to go on the journey wherever we're taking them, right? When you feel seen, you're more willing to take the instruction of whatever the authority figure, the person, and it would have to be an authority figure. You're more willing to take that advice and to be guided by them. The other thing that happens is when we see them, we are more able to reach out to them and connect with them and actually have guidance that actually connects with them, that reaches them. Because traditionally what we do, it's like that dark room and we're just reaching our hand out in a dark room, trying to connect with them, hoping that we connect with them or thinking that we must be connecting with them.
Because you got your
grabbing
hand.
my hand? Yeah. Like, why aren't you coming with me? We're like yanking them all along the journey. And the reason why we have to yank them so much and so often, and sometimes get dislocated arms, we're yanking them so hard, is because we're not really seeing them first. And when we see them, they're more willing to go on their journey and our guidance becomes better. Just like in the story that I just told about the child with the shoes. Now, the other part, and this part can be really, I mean, all the parts are difficult for their own reasons, but this is also really difficult. And this comes up in that story that you said that your supervisor said that you could bring your 1-year-old, and what he had to do to make that decision is he had to trust you. He had to trust that you were doing your best with the knowledge and resources and skills that you had. And we have a hard time doing that. You know, we have these stories that will play over in our head. Like they're just trying to manipulate us. They're just trying to get one over on us. They're just trying to, work the system or whatever it is. But if we trust that everyone is trying their best, and everyone is, because like even you now, you may not be at your best. Right? There's a difference. You may not be at your best, but you are trying your best. When you go to work, you might not be operating at 100%, capacity, because maybe, there's something, you got something going on in your mind about, your child, or maybe they woke up and they were like a little sick and you're waiting for a phone call from the school because you're like, I kind of need to go to work, but I need to go to work, but my child is kind of sick, but I think they'll be all right. I'm just going to give them a little bit of Tylenol and then send them to school. But now you're worried at work. And so you're kind of like not fully there. You're trying your best, but that doesn't mean you're at your best, right? Or maybe you are you're sleep deprived. Maybe you got the new baby, or maybe it's maybe it's not even a new baby because it's 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds be up. They're like trying to be in your bed and all that stuff, or, there's all kinds of reasons why we may not be at our best, and for that, if we want to, if our goal is to improve someone's performance, then what we need to do is to support them in their whatever they're struggling with, whatever they're, if that thing is, you wouldn't, if you were at them, you'd be worrying about your 1-year-old. You might not even made it to the meeting, right? But that piece of trusting that everyone's trying their best with the skills, knowledge, and resources they have access to in that moment, can be really difficult for us, but it's an essential piece of the puzzle.
Completely agree. A lot of times parents will come to me and say, like, I know they're capable of this because they did this 3 weeks ago at their grandma's house in the backyard. But today this is a totally different day. And that's not how that works. So that's great that they were able to do it that one time. But today is a whole different world. This is a whole different human with a whole different set of demands on them, and emotional challenges and developmental challenges. So,
and you know how you can empathize with that as a parent, right? So you're listening to this podcast, so you're probably trying to improve, learn new skills and improve your skills as a parent so that you can, give more to your child so that they have healthier habits and they're better off than what you were growing up. And I know the fact that you're taking the time to listen to this podcast, means that you clearly you're trying your best, right? And I believe you're trying your best. If you're listening here, you're here. I believe that you're trying your best, 100%. And you probably on some days you probably do all, the skill. You do the choices, you do the empathy, you keep your composure, you're able to, use all those skills. And some days not so much, right? Now, just because we use those skills 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago, last year, and you're not using them now, does that mean that you're being bad? Does
Or
that
disrespectful?
Yeah, or disrespectful? Like, again, and this is also an opportunity for you to show yourself grace, right?
Yeah.
Because you're learning new skills. And we think growth, sometimes maybe it's just a hope, but we think growth is just this straight line up, just this diagonal line just going up. But it's really more an up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. It's kind of like the stock market, right? It goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but you keep on working at it. It continues to go up.
Yes.
It continues to go up and up and up. Now, there are going to be some days, some down days, you're like, oh my gosh, it feels like this just isn't for me. And,
Lord, I have been possessed.
Yeah. Right. And those days are a part of the learning process, right? The mistakes are an essential part of the learning process for you as a parent and for them as children. And so when we see them, making developmental mistakes, and that's what they are, developmental mistakes, we can look at them and say, and look at it as an opportunity for learning, an opportunity for growth, right? And honestly, not just for the kids, a lot of times for us too. An opportunity for empathy, not just for the kids, a lot of times for us too, right? What I say, because another thing that trips us with this, connected with this, is that we want to be perfect. We want to be this perfect parent that we see on Instagram that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And, what I say is avoid being a perfectionist, be an improvementist. The goal isn't to be perfect every day. The goal is to improve a little every day.
Yes. Yes. So often in my coaching with parents, the first stage that we move through is breaking down that illusion that being a conscious parent is like a destination and you get there and you're perfect and then you never have a hard day again. And that's that.
There is no destination.
There is no destination. None.
Only the journey. Only the journey. Your parenting didn't start with you and it will not end with you.
Yes.
You're picking up parenting from when your parents left off.
Yep.
Right. And so the way that I talk about it, the way I think about it, it's like iPhones, right? And this kind of this gentle, respectful, this conscious parenting, it's based off of this new technology, this brain science, and just learning, and us kind of improving really as a human race and learning more about our needs as humans and what healthy habits are. And it's relatively new, right?
Yeah.
Your parents did not have access to this information in the same way that we have access to it right now. Totally. Not at all, right? They couldn't be on social media scrolling through cat memes and get a little tip for parenting, right? For free, right? It just wasn't available in the same way. And so, it's like it's like the first iPhone, right? And it's got some bugs in it. It's not perfect, right? It's not perfect. But celebrate being the first iPhone. Pat yourself on the back for even to really embark on this journey in this way, because a lot of us were raised with, by BlackBerries, by flip phones, by pagers, by rotary phones, by adding machines. I don't know how far.
Carrier pigeons.
Yeah, right. There you go. And so this is huge. So pat yourself on the back for being, this huge step in innovation. And it's going to be hard to make this huge leap in technology. And there are going to be bugs already as you're working through it. But there will also be as you're improving and working and reflecting and being empathetic for yourself, and also hopefully have a community or at least one other person that you can kind of talk to and reflect on, the day and how things are going, and the things that you're trying, or maybe you're doing some coaching, there are going to be updates to your software that's
Yeah.
going to improve the hardware. That's that you're going to improve. You are going to get better and better and better. But again, there's not going to be a point where it's like, I'm all done, right?
Technology's done. We did it, guys.
Right. And your kids will learn from all the updates
Yeah.
and all the things that you learn. They'll build on that. And that's going to be the iPhone 2. And their kids will build on that. And that's going to be the iPhone 3, and so on and so on and so on, until eventually we're at the iPhone 23 or Google Glass or something like that. I don't know.
Yes.
But it's going to continue. You're not just raising your children, you're raising your children's children.
Yes.
So it's going to, it's not going to, hopefully that can release a little bit of stress off of you, because you don't have to break every unhealthy pattern of behavior, every generational cycle in this one generation. Learn as much as you can, grow as much as you can, and your kids will pick up from where you left on. You will pass the torch, and that's the way it's meant to be.
Yes. That journey. I mean, evolution by definition, it does not end. It continues throughout your entire lifetime. So the moment I'm done self-actualizing, depending on your post-life belief system, would be when I die. So even me, I am always learning and growing and evolving and making adjustments and staying open-minded to learning new things, and always, like you said, improving little bits. And that's part of what I'm often having to do in that, when people come to coaching, is breaking down that misconception of perfection. And then in its place, we look for one small thing to improve. Like you said, healing that intergenerational trauma, or evolving beyond where we are today, continuing to actualize more deeply. I sometimes think of it like a relay race. How far can you get it? That some of our parents were running their legs drunk, or but they still covered some distance. I'll say my mom was 100% in shame and control-based parenting, but she never hit me, and she made a big commitment to never ever hit me. And that was something she learned between my older sister and I. So my older sister did get hit by the time I came along. She said, I'm committing to changing this intergenerational trauma. And that was a huge piece that she made. So I have lots of learning that I have done since she was mothering me. Like you said, all this new information that I have access to that she didn't have. But I can still be grateful for the distance that she did cover, and have that
100%.
mindset of continuing to carry it forward. And then my children will be able to take it so much farther even.
Yes, 100%. And that's, you bring up a really good point about trying to give grace to our parents and empathy to our parents, and really seeing them, and that can be hard. And it takes a lot of healing, and you gotta go at your own pace, and I'm not gonna, and everyone's got different situations, and so I'm not gonna make a blanket statement about every parent and every child and what everyone needs to do, but just know that there may be an opportunity for empathy there. And that doesn't mean that you have to have them, in your life, at all, or all the time, or weekly, or coming. You got to really gauge that for yourself and your family, and you got to know what's healthy for you. Make those choices yourself. But I really do think that when here's something I just kind of want to share, that as I've been learning this information, improving, that I'm just really trying to stay aware of and stay grounded, and it can be hard. That sometimes when we have spent a lot of time thinking about something and learning something, and we get to this place, and we immerse ourselves in a community so we can continue learning, and these are good things to help us improve and to grow and to support ourselves, that we sometimes forget or lose sight, or just don't really have the awareness of where we used to be at before we really started embarking on this journey intentionally. And where other, where other people are at and kind of how they got to where they got to.
Yeah.
Right. You said that, your parent, hit your older sister, but didn't hit you because she'd learned through that. A lot of times, people have stories when we start to ask questions about like, okay, well, how were you raised? She might say that, like, I thought I was with your older sister. I thought I was doing something really good because I would only hit, I would never hit out of anger, you know, and then the parent would be like, I would never, maybe the parent before that was like, I would never use a belt or spoon or, chocolate, whatever your culture, whatever, whatever, and sometimes we don't get these stories and we don't have this perspective of where other people are at, other generations are at before us. Now that doesn't let them off the hook that they should, they don't have a responsibility to continue learning, like we are too, because this stuff is available now, and even though they may not be using the technology in the same way, they could still make a commitment to learn. I know some people who were not gentle parents, but they're gentle grandparents, right? And they've learned over the years. So it doesn't let them off the hook. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be responsible or accountable for their actions. It's just for us to have perspective on just understanding where their behavior was coming from. Because I'll also say that, like, in my parents' generation, if you weren't hitting your child, you were like you were the bad parent. Like, you're not hitting your child, you must be neglecting them. And so to go up against that, the cultural norm, that's difficult. That's really hard, right? Even now, today, where there's so much more support, I'm sure that, you still are struggling, even with all the more support that we have.
Yeah.
And you may, I hope the other side of the coin too, for the grandparents in here, who will feel defensive about, like, kids doing their children doing things a different way. I hope that the next generation comes back and says, hey, we're going to change something, change the way you did this. We know better now. Yeah. And we're going to improve, and we're going to work on, X, Y, Z, right? You guys, and I hope they have a hard time fathoming as how we shamed children and we called them bad for not having the skills to meet our expectations. I hope they come back and have that conversation, and I can be like, you know what? Like, we were messing up. You're right. And I'm here. I want to hear how you're doing, what you're doing. And
call me in.
I want to practice. Yeah. Call me in. And I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of it. I want to understand it. And, so I could be a part of moving us from the iPhone 23 to Google Glass.
Yes.
Or, maybe Google Glass isn't a great example because I don't even know if that's going to come out. But,
yes. No, I totally know what you mean. And yes, I love all that. I think it's really like that first step in your process that you're talking about of C, like me trying to understand where my mom was coming from and all of the intergenerational traumas that were kind of, passed down to me wasn't so much for her, or wouldn't even necessarily change like boundaries that needed to be in place. But it helped me with a lot of healing and inner peace, because understanding something like really helps you to process it and make sense with it and create some intentional like meaning behind it that helps you move forward in a really like conscious, healthy way.
Yes. 100%.
Okay. I have asked you none of the questions I was going to ask you, but one that I do want to make sure I ask, because we just kind of mentioned it a little bit, is about the calling in thing. Because I would say, like, truly one of your superpowers is how you are able to extend compassion, not only to children, but to parents and teachers and caregivers who like are not yet fully embodying this approach to relating respectfully with children. And I just love and have felt so inspired by the way you extend all of these values that we talk about to like public figures or videos of other like adults interacting with children. Like we're all sort of all in that, my audience anyway is all in on this like conscious parenting stuff with their kids. And then I usually kind of like expand it a little bit to say like, hey, it's actually just a way of being in connection with other humans. And it can be that way with your partner too. And it can be that way with your friends too. And you have like taken it this extra step of like, it can be with strangers on the internet too. And I love that. So can you share more about your approach to calling someone in as opposed to calling them out?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's kind of with the see, guide, trust thing. It's assuming that everyone's trying their best with the skills, knowledge, and resources they have access to in that moment. I really try to see where they're coming from, where they may be coming from. With strangers on the internet, it's like hard. So sometimes I don't even reply, and I'll let the thread just go, and and sometimes I'll like read it, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll make a video about that. And then I'll make a video. I'll try to make a video about it. But what I talk about really is about relationships and humans. And I really do believe that, the stuff that I'm talking about, the stuff that we're talking about is building the foundation for world peace, being able to, meet our needs in a healthy way, being able to communicate nonviolently, being able to empathize with each other, then also having the skills to really execute that, right? When we get overwhelmed, when we get triggered, how do we handle that, right? Because, even if we all in the world, like every large organization and country in the world say, hey, this war thing is whack. We're not going to do it anymore. We're all going to sign a piece of paper to say world peace is going to happen from now on. And we all agree. We all say, yeah, thumbs up. We all give one thumbs up at the same time. And this happens, even if we're able to pull that off, right? Inevitably, there will be a group of people, there will be a person or a group of people or factions that begin to war again, because they won't know how to meet their needs in a healthy way. They won't know how to, communicate nonviolently. They won't know how to empathize and keep their composure and to really see the other person without judgment. And, it's going to create, something will happen and it will create, war will break out again.
Yeah.
And so I think beyond any kind of organization establishing world peace, that for that to ever happen, we need to start getting at the root of this stuff. And that really starts with our inner peace and extending that peace and care to our children so they grow up with it being the norm, and it's the cultural norm. And so we're all kind of using these skills with each other. We're all able to problem solve without resorting to violence, because the whole spanking thing, like that's the reasons, like, oh, like nothing else works, like I have to resort to violence. And it's just like, it's like we don't have the skills. And again, I don't think the people, I'm very much against, if you watch my videos, you can tell that I'm very much against, spanking children, hitting children, whatever you want to call it. But I also don't think that those people are bad people. I think it's an issue where, and everyone's got their different circumstances, but they don't have the skills, support, and resources to really execute, to problem solve without it. And they'll even tell on themselves without knowing they're telling on themselves by saying, like it's a last resort. And so like it is a last resort. I extended
all my resources and I'm out. Like I have nothing else.
I'm out. Yes, I have nothing else. But what if you did have something else, right? And I think that most parents would say that, yeah, I would do it. If I was confident, I believed that it worked and I could do it, like I would do it. And then the ones who said no, like, again, that's that generational stuff coming up. And that's more probably have to do with environment and community and all that stuff and what they grew up with. So, yeah, and for me too, I got to practice what I preach. Like, do I see comments on the internet and sometimes feel triggered and then feel emotions? Yeah. And I'm actually like, it's funny you brought it up. Like, I actually have like, I don't get super excited about all the content that I put out. Like, there's some content that a lot of content I put out that's like, I know a lot of people need this information. So how can I deliver this content in a way that people will, how can I meet people with that and where they can really receive it?
Yeah.
And it'd be maybe a little engaging, entertaining. But there's some content that I put out that's like, ooh, like this idea that
you're on fire about it.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, I cannot wait to record this and to post this on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And by the way, my social media is Mr. Chazz, Mr. Chazz.
Follow him everywhere.
Yeah. Mr. Chazz's Leadership, Parenting, and Teaching Podcast, my podcast. But there's a piece of content where I am kind of sharing this idea of just how kids are struggling and they're just like, like I don't got the skills like to handle, to problem solve. Parents are struggling, and they get triggered and, there's like, okay, I don't got the skills like to problem solve. And like, I'm even going to put myself in there when like I'm getting triggered and then just, and to show like the process of like self-talk and how to kind of work through these internal struggles that we experience. Because children are going through it, parents are going through it, teachers are going through it, creators are going through it.
You and I are going through it.
Yeah.
It's so meta in like the best way, because sometimes there will be parents or advocates of this, philosophy, gentle parenting, respectful parenting, peaceful parenting, whatever. And then they'll be kind of like trying to shame and control other examples that they see in the world, which like I understand like psychologically how like what's happening there and what's at play. So I have heaps of empathy for it. And also, if we hope to inspire, offer, invite, like it can't come from a place of shame or control. So like the way you did that with Super Nanny, for example, where I know this was a while ago, you posted about it, but you were like, hey, I see you. I see that like up until that point in our culture, like we'd been like hitting children, and a lot of the families on your show started off hitting the children. And you were saying, hey, we've learned some new things since then. And here's some new tools. Like, and I like see you, and I am grateful for you for taking us that distance. And now your show's coming back, and we've actually learned a lot since then. And like, so here are some new tools that I'd love to invite you in to consider. And like, that's so inspiring. And I hope just a lot of other people can see how we can extend that conscious relating to other humans from, yes, with our children, yes, within ourselves, yes, within the relationships and the real world around us. And then also like in a broader sense too. A lot of my audience, they're really intelligent and powerful and formidable forces. And so I want them all to kind of like bask in a bit of your light in that as well.
Yeah. And it's, we grew up with this. So like the way we grew up, it's like, it's conditioned in our body. So it's like, not to say that, you necessarily won't have reactions and we won't like feel these things anymore. It's just that when you do feel it, you'll know how to process it and handle it. And then also be the person you want to be to get the outcome that you really want to get. Right. Because if I shame parents for shaming, then I'm going to create more shaming behaviors.
Yes.
Right. And it's just, and not even just, not even just in the parents, in the parent to the child. And yes, there's that whole kick the cat from the top to the bottom is very real, but also like my comment section, it'll come up, the algorithm will pick up on it. And so, I try to be, it's also about really trying to be the change. Now, do I feel when I see things, do I have the clap back in my mind? And I'm like, in my mind, like, ooh, I could tear this person to pieces, but let me just sit with that for a moment. Let me process that for a moment, because, being real with y'all, there are times, and I would say earlier in my creator career, probably had that feeling more often. And especially, comes up from a place of wanting to protect children and really caring, about
Same.
this vulnerable group of people. But I also have to remember that, a lot of times these behaviors come about because the teachers or parents are feeling vulnerable too. And I also have to remember that, like I was also using these shaming and, punishing behavior before I learned something new. Right. And in the process of me learning something new, I still went back to it. And so I had to be like, oh, wait, what did I just say? Ooh, that I guess let me sit on that for a second. I might need to come back and apologize about the way that I handled that. And I gotta say, because I said I'm back in the classroom now, that really being the change, your energy has power. The energy that you bring into a space, you add to this space. So if you bring more like anger and chaotic energy to the space, you're going to add more anger and chaotic energy to the space. If you bring empathetic, you know, empathetic, seeing people for the best, like if you bring that energy to this space, you're going to add that energy to this space. And I've already, in a short time that I've been working in this school, I've only really been back in it maybe a little over 2 months. I'm already seeing a huge impact that I'm making on multiple people. And while there's still so much more growth that there is to be had, I just encourage you to really, really be the change, right? As best as you can. And part of that is having empathy for yourself when you're not the change, when you're the tradition, when you do the traditional methods. And the other part of that too, which we won't really have time to talk about too much, but is when we do mess up, apologizing. And a part of that apology, just like we would teach children, is actually to say, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. It's also like, next time I will do this, right? Yes. It's a commitment to change. And even just saying that out loud to children teaches them how to repair, right? After the rupture. And even just in that process, you make that mistake that you made maybe a more powerful learning opportunity and experience than if you would not have made the mistake at all and you were that perfect parent or teacher.
Yes. Here's the impact I just observed of my behavior. And I totally acknowledge it and take ownership for that. And here's what I learned from it. And so here's how I'll handle that differently next time. I'm really sorry. Like, thank you for your patience with me. And yes. Oh, this is a perfect place to end. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. The show note.
Yeah, go. Yeah. I'm done. I try to pack as much as I could.
It's perfect.
In that, follow me on social media, y'all, to get more concise tips. I'm sorry,
show notes.
Let's edit that out. I just bit my tongue. Actually, don't edit that out. Keep it, because mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Yeah. Yes. I'm gonna say it. No one just cut the tape. We're done.
Okay, the show notes can be found at sagefamily.com/podcast79, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. So, Mr. Chazz, tell us all the places where everybody needs to go to follow and subscribe and listen and reach out for coaching and just to get in deeper connection with all of the light that you have to shine on the world.
Okay, yeah. So, mistakes are an opportunity for learning. And you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm a little bit on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit on YouTube as well. I need to do more posts on YouTube, but I have a YouTube channel for kids, and some of my content is on YouTube as well. I have a podcast, Mr. Chazz's Leadership, Parenting, and Teaching podcast. And then I also have or do one-on-one coaching, www.patreon.com/Mr. Chazz. And you can get access to coaching, and I have a bunch of different tier levels to try to meet people where they're at and people's different situations. Oh, something new that just popped up that I'm starting to do now. I'm actually sharing my journey working in the school, like a little bit more intimately through Instagram subscribers. It's the subscriber only Instagram. The reason I'm not doing that to everyone, because if I was talking about everyone and mistakes and then people might feel some type of way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything like bad about, but I'm just really sharing my experience and people that I am, how I'm growing. And that's a very intimate group of people that I want to share that with. So you can subscribe to me on Instagram, and it's only like, I think like $5 or something. You kind of just share my story and get exclusive content, and just be part of my little group.
Yes.
My
Okay.
community.
I want in.
You follow me on Instagram.
I'm doing it. Consider it done.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chazz, thank you so much for joining me. And you were actually my first, this is the first time I've ever recorded video. Usually I don't do videos. So we're talking about like being vulnerable and human. I didn't even plan on it today. I just saw your face. I was like, I want to talk to his face. And here we are. So thank you for being my first video recording connected to the podcast.
All right. Are you going to put the video out somewhere?
Yeah, it'll go on YouTube. Look at me being brave.
Yeah. Now you guys are going to see me bite my lip 5 minutes ago while I was trying to talk. That's great. I love that.
We'll have the visual.
Yes, and I talk a lot with my hands, so go
Me too.
there.
All right. Thank you so much.